What's up, friends of the good mood? This is Manni, and Pixonic just killed free-to-play a little more. We have a huge list of changes for buffs and nerfs coming into War Robots soon. Some Jock being nerfed, Shell being buffed. You see the number of buffs is significantly much shorter than the ones of nerfs, and the ones of nerfs actually includes weapons that I'm surprised are even on the nerf list, okay? So let's go through this together. It's not going to be a long video. I'm going to make this as short as possible. Shredder Blitz has just posted this 1 hour and 25 minutes ago. 11.3 balance changes. We've noticed that the performance of some tier 3 robots and Titan weapons have become comparable to that of certain older tier 4 weapons, and vice versa. To better align their effectiveness with their intended rarity, we've adjusted stats of several of these items. Additionally, we've made some tweaks to the stats of selected robots, okay? So the first thing that surprises the heck out of me is Snare, Skadi, and Hail. These weapons are reducing their ammo capacity from 48 fully loaded to 30, okay? So that is like a good 35% or whatever of possible charge that's gone. And remember that these things have already reloaded forever and then emptied instantly, okay? Now the damage per particle also goes down from 1080 on Snare to 730. 1450 on Skadi to 1100. So another 30% gone even here in the damage output, okay? Hail losing even much more than that. And then the reload time has been reduced from 15 to 11. So that reload time by itself would maybe be enough to combat the ammo reduction a little bit, but that damage nerf, and I'm sorry to say it, but this comes completely unjustified, since when was Snare, Skadi, and Hail the type of weapon that ruins the game balancing? Like, seriously. I might be able to understand it a little better on the Gauss-Weber Volt, because those builds were very interesting and dominant and dangerous. They could one-shot you. And yeah, so I can understand a little better here, but even there, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if we look at the numbers, because max charge is reduced from 7 to 4. So basically almost only 50% of your fire rate, firing damage when you fully have that weapon loaded. And you lose almost 50% of your damage output now. The reload time, however, is reduced from 6 to 4. So you charge up 33% faster, okay, that ammo. And then we have the particle damage increased. So, okay, so they reduce the damage that you fire in one full charged shot, but give you a faster reload instead. And then they increase the particle damage from 1600 to 1900 on Gauss. That must be Volt. Then 2500 to 2900 on Weber, and 3330 to 3900 on Gauss. And I remember not so long ago they've made a nerf where they changed the numbers quite the opposite. Like, it was higher and it put it back down. Now they put it back up. So overall, I'm not even sure if this is now a nerf or a buff or nothing under, I don't know. I guess we're gonna have to really look at the numbers and compare those side by side. Rhine, Cryo, and Glacier is getting a shorter shot interval. So instead of every 0.09 seconds, you now fire every 0.06 seconds one rocket. So higher fire rate, higher burst damage unload. However, the damage per particle was reduced from an insane amounts. For Rhyme, 1900 to 1130. Cryo, 2500 to 1700, bro. That is like 30%, 35% just gone. Okay, having a 33% faster burst unload with 33% less damage per rocket means you unload instantly, you're empty, you have no more damage output, right? And that full clip basically did the same damage. No, it did less damage than before. So much less damage than before. And Glacier does 4,500 and instead now 2,260. That is less than 50%. So Glacier got more than a 50% damage nerf. This is absolutely ridiculous. Incinerator, Scourger, and Scald. Why is this on the list of nerfs? It doesn't make any sense to me. These weapons were only good at highly resistant targets and titans at best, and even then they weren't really good. They were just able to counter resistance with their Explo Bomb. Now they have an increased splash radius of 12 meters, which, by the way, this sounds interesting. 12 meters is quite a lot of splash. But I don't think you can have like a splash increase pilot skill for them, right? So that is bigger, splash radius, and the shot interval was reduced. So you fire a little slower, but not much slower. It's just a small percentage. And the damage per particle was reduced from 1,000 to 600 on the small Scald, 1,400 to 900 on Scourger, and 1,900 to 1,200 on Incinerator. Now remember that these weapons do the majority of their damage. It's hard to say if they do the majority of damage through the Bomb Blast effect, which is unaffected by this damage change. But they will definitely lose a lot of damage output here, period, okay? And the increased area splash is not going to compensate for that. Then we have Fainter. Reload interval reduced, which is good, because that thing reloads basically the entire time when you use it, like play. You're doing nothing but reloading on the weapon from 3 to 2.5 seconds, and I believe they mean like one segment. Of the 3 full segments that you can charge, or 4, one segment recharges now 0.5 seconds shorter, or faster. The shot interval is increased almost twice as much. So the weapon unloads... No, hold on. Twice as slow. The shot interval was firing every 0.13 seconds, and now you fire every 0.25 seconds. So you unload twice as slow. You take twice as long to unload your full ammo, which means you have half the burst damage output when you're unloading. And the damage per particle was reduced as well. A weapon that was barely ever used by people in the Champions League at the very least. I never see somebody running these weapons because the DPM is just too bad for it. The DPS for a short time is okay, and then it's empty, and your DPM is going underground level. So you're not able to have an impact on the battlefield large enough to actually make an impact. And now they're reducing the damage per particle from 4,300 to 3,000 on the Fainter. But only on the Fainter, yeah, because there's only this one. Yeah, I don't know, it makes no sense that this weapon gets a nerf. Honestly, 0 sense for me, in my opinion. Then we have the Sumjock that gets a durability increase slightly, 215,000 to 230,000. That is just an alibi change, or a buff, because here comes the kicker. Remember that the Sumjock used to have like 2 seconds between shifting into his next invincibilities? Then they increased it to 5 seconds, so now you can really kill that thing when it comes out of invincibility, unless it has phase shift. With phase shift you could still stay alive. Now they set this to 7 seconds. The Sumjock will now be 7 seconds vulnerable before you can activate that again. A lot of you guys will like that change, I know. In many aspects, I even like it too, because I hate those Sumjocks roaming around and just being invincible. But I think what hurts this gameplay more is the fact that they can stay invincible for such a long time. Instead of increasing the time between those things, I think what would have made more sense if the Sumjock just wasn't able to cross the map 2 times before becoming vulnerable. It's a little exaggerated, but you get what I mean. The distance it can cover in complete invincibility is just too long. That might be the problem, not the fact that he was able to get into the next ability too quickly. I don't think that was the case anymore. I was sufficiently having enough time to kill Sumjocks now between their abilities. This makes it even worse now. And the turret damage particle, like particle damage on the turret that it deploys, goes from 9,200 to 7,800. So a feelable nerf on the damage output of that turret, but it's still going to do a lot of damage. That turret was really doing a lot of damage. Claw, Jaw, Talon actually getting a buff, a really interesting one, by the way. I will have to test them after this update. Damage per particle from 3,600 to 4,600 or 700 on the Claw. Then we have 6,200 to 7,000 on the Jaw. Medium doesn't get quite as much of a buff. And then we have the Talon, I think it's the heavy one, 7,650 to 9,300. Bro, the Talon, I think, is going to hurt. You might actually see some Lynx with Talons again. We'll see. Anyways, damage per particle on atomizers was increased from 2,038 to 2,240. A weapon nobody in the Champions League ever uses. So this is like, again, to me, this is like an alibi buff. They put this in knowing it will change absolutely nothing. And Gargantua Pantak rule, damage per particle increased. That's good, because those Titan weapons suck royally. And they have had 1,170 damage per particle, going up to 1,260. It's not even 100 more. It's like 90 damage more. Wow, thanks for the buff. 750 to 850, though, on the smaller one. But yeah, so that at least that's 100. But still, I think those weapons are underperforming tremendously. And then the shell, another alibi increase of durability from 253 to 270,000. So let's not make this any unnecessarily longer than it needs to be. I think there are some things in here that make sense. And there are some things in here that make absolutely no sense to me, like the Fainter being one of them, okay? I can understand why Gauss, Weber, and Volt is being looked at. It really one-shots a lot of things. But then again, they didn't really nerf it, did they? Right? Damage goes up, but the maximum charge, like the stored-up damage that you have in a fully loaded weapon, goes down. Altogether, they compensate to do about 20% less damage than before, but you have a 30% increased reload speed. So, yeah, I don't know. Hail Skadi, yeah, I know they could kill you relatively quickly when they were fully charged, but A, unlike Gauss, Volt, Weber, they need time to do that. They need a few seconds of contact. And B, the ammo loading was already terrible before. Incinerator Scorcher was never a problem to begin with. I so rarely ever saw somebody running that in the Champions League. Usually like a Harpy or Siren from high up. Mostly trying to focus on dealing damage together with the Firestorm Rocket. Also bump effect to targets in the area and to be able to counter resistance, which exactly that is the case of this weapon, the point of this weapon. That it's able to bypass that with the bump effect, which they haven't changed necessarily, but they did change the damage on the weapon. As if that was too much. And you know what? Then we have weapons here that should be included that never are shown. Like, for example, what's it called? Not Tamer, Trickster. The weapon Trickster. Or basically all corrosion weapons for that matter. Bane, Toxic, Wasp. All corrosion weapons suck so bad. Because they've changed corrosion to only like last for 5 seconds. So their main purpose of these weapons is to do corrosion damage. Some of these weapons, like Tricksters, are so weak in their damage output that they simply cannot do any damage. They can't, like if there's a Dagon robot, you literally cannot harm him because you will never break through the Dagon shield. Your just damage output is so non-existent on those weapons, you'll never break through this shield. And since you can't get through the shield, you can't apply the corrosion, so you're never going to do damage. So what would need to happen here is that corrosion goes through shields, not the initial damage of the Wasp hit, but the corrosion aspect of the Wasp should go through the shield, so that at least that part works through the shield, I think. Maybe that would make sense. Same with physical shields. And another thing is that the corrosion part itself should last longer so that the actual corrosion weapons can use their actual corrosion, you know? But yeah, so many things that just don't add up in the game. And I wish they would just contact us, YouTubers, talk with us. You know, we play the game every day, man. We know, okay, I'm not playing every day anymore, but I used to, and I still play it fairly often. And I'm sure if you ask us creators, or even the players, we can give you some pretty good information where you should focus your attention on, right? Yeah, whatever. Now it's getting long anyway, so... Ladies and gents, I hope you had a good time, and I know this wasn't the best of mood videos. At the same time, I feel like I kept it kind of cool and more like on stats. But yeah, I still can't understand a lot of things in here, and I wish I could. But yeah, so have a good one. Manni signing off, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.